then I sort of got a calling to become a shaman, believe it or not. And so I spent the next 6 years working as an underground ayahuasca shaman. I come into the shift one day, and then all of a sudden, the nurse is like, "Hey, there's a guy. He's dying. I think maybe you should hold his hand or something. He's having quite a rough time." And it was very normal for her because she'd been working there for like 20 years. So I go down and I sit with the guy, and yeah, I helped this guy die. I didn't even know his name, and it was not a pretty death. Like I realized a lot of us don't realize that we're actually alive. Like you walk around and people have like no fucking idea of what it means to be alive.
Hello, all beautiful people around this magical planet. This is Robert Kahnis Beyond the Courage podcast. Today we have a really amazing guest, Nick Sun. Out of all stand-uppers on this beautiful planet, you are our first comedian guest. And Beyond the Courage is a project, is a creation about celebrating life, about celebrating our guests and celebrating our viewers. And I hope we will have a huge fun today with you. We were really astonished by your work, being comedian, author, podcaster, and I think you are also very deeply into spiritual development, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's degrees of it and phases, but yeah, I guess I was on the spiritual path via the psychedelic plant medicine path. Yeah.
I gotta say, when I read your website about you, I was laughing like really crazy. That I love that your introduction, that you're coming from fifth dimension and you are living in the third dimensional world. That's really really funny. Really, so resonating with my heart. What you do,
Yeah.
what you wrote about yourself.
Well, people always do these biographies, and like I just started really questioning, like, is that really who we are? Like, like
Mhm.
how do you really describe yourself? And it's all just stories. So I just thought I'd go to the base level story, according to
Mhm.
my understanding, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta admit that I'm a huge fan of comedy and stand-up myself. I've been watching stand-up and comedy for more than 20 years now, here in States, and also I'm Polish, so uh, also over there the stand-up is pretty young over there. It's like just 15 years old,
Oh
but
wow.
we have really superbly talented comedians in Poland, and Polish stand-up is doing really really very well.
Oh, there you go.
And yeah, and as I said before, Beyond the Courage is a creation about celebrating life. Today we would like to celebrate you, and
Oh,
uh,
awesome.
and how would you love to be celebrated,
Be
Nick?
celebrated. Oh geez. If I could have like a whole bunch of funds rained upon my body so I don't have to worry about financial vagaries of existing on Earth, that would be a pretty good way to be celebrated. And if I could have all my worries and stresses of life as a human lifted from my shoulders permanently, forever, I think that's how I'd like to be celebrated.
Uh, Very well put. Well, we choose you to be our first stand-up comedian guest because you are extremely unique, and you combine that comedy. You're superbly talented, really really funny, and based of the research we did about you, it's a quite a journey, right? Being Nick Sun.
Yeah, it doesn't stop, apparently. Um, yeah, I mean, do you want me to tell my shorthand story or whatever,
Sure,
or?
sure. We would love to hear. Our viewers would love to hear your story. It could be
Okay, well,
even
here's the
way
annotated
longer than
version.
short.
Okay, yeah, well, basically, I did comedy for 13 years, which, from the get-go, pretty much. I turned, whatever, 18 or 19, and then I wandered on stage. And for listeners who aren't aware of the realities of comedians, they're not particularly mentally very well people. So I was kind of on this comedy train. And also, if you're not aware of show business, it's not particularly a very spiritual place. I'd probably say it's anti-spiritual in many respects. So I was sort of just slogging it out for 13 years, and I would say I was pretty. I had some demons, so I had some issues, as a lot of comedians do, and I wasn't really dealing with them. And then I sort of had, I guess, what you'd say, a mental health crisis slash spiritual emergence process in about 2016, sparked by ayahuasca. And then I went through a 7 year. I quit comedy. My original intention for drinking ayahuasca was show me how to be a better comedian,
Oh,
and
okay.
I communicated with the ayahuasca spirit, and she told me, "Quit. It's killing you." And I was like, "What? No, that's not part of the plan." And then I was pretty much put into contact with the Gaian intelligence, if people are familiar with the James Lovelock idea of this overarching intelligence of the planet. And in short, I talked to this is where I went deep hippie. I talked to I talked to Mother Earth, guys, and she basically told me that things were pretty fucked up, and um, yeah, and then so I sort of was uh sort of quit comedy. I was kind of guided. I was just pretty much told, like, you need to get over yourself. The entire human species needs to get over itself. Like, we're very egotistical as a species at this point in our development, at least in the West. Um, Not so much with indigenous cultures that are still intact. And so I was guided to basically, and also the life of a comedian is the ultimate exercise in selfishness. I mean, you're basically being paid to talk about yourself in front of people every night, and it's just you. And so I was guided to basically reconnect with my roots in Nepal. And then the day before I left, the earthquake happened. And so I ended up doing a whole bunch of earthquake relief work, which was a complete 180 from my usual existence. And yeah, and then I ended up helping the terminally ill in Kolkata. And then I sort of got a calling to become a shaman, believe it or not. And so I spent the next 6 years working as an underground ayahuasca shaman, um, and not doing comedy at all. I had no, I really thought that that was behind me. I was never going back to comedy ever again. I didn't watch comedy for 6 years. I was just very much on the healing path. And then last year I had a total midlife crisis. And I was like, well, I don't understand it. I've done all this healing work. Why do I feel so fucking shit? And it was just as dark as before when I was a comedian. And I really was like, what the fuck? Like, I've done all this work. Why do I feel this way? It was like literally, um, I wouldn't say I was suicidal, but there was a lot of thoughts of death, which was very disconcerting. And so, amidst this sort of Thanatos death phase, I just thought, hey, I think I need to do comedy again. So I got on stage, and then all the depression evaporated, and I thought, oh fuck, I think this is what I got to do now. So now it's been about 8, 9 months since I've been back on stage, and I'm slowly getting my stage legs back. But I'm basically working on a show about, yeah, about the healing path and ayahuasca. But yeah, which has been, yeah, it's been a trip in itself, really. So that's where I'm at now. So I'm just sort of getting my stage legs back and remembering how to be funny in front of people who haven't drunk psychedelics in the woods for 7 years straight.
Well, we think as a team that you are superbly funny and extremely talented, and you got great energy. I love your energy when you create comedy and your
Yeah.
expression. It's very very rare, and
Oh,
and
thanks.
and and
Well, the
and I
energy's
can
good
see.
now. Before it was terrible. When I was not healed, it was just yeah. You can watch some older videos. You're like, Jesus
Mhm.
Christ, what the fuck was I on?
uh,
Sorry, I
so
interrupted you. What were you saying?
No, it's fine. It's quite a story that, you're being a comedian, then you stopped for 7 years, and then you came back healed with the sacred plants, right? Would you say
Yeah.
that you feel healed today?
I mean, the healing never stops, as they say, but I definitely had a moment in my process where I was just like, oh, you know what? I think I'm pretty good now. Like, I'm generally a pretty happy guy. I have my moments, but life is depressing sometimes, especially if you're a fairly, aware or conscious or self-aware person that is trying to live a life that's not completely disassociated from existence, which is what I'd say the mean level of humanity is at the moment. So yeah, but in general, I feel pretty good. Like I know what I need to do to be happy, and I know, there is a certain self-care ritual that I have to take part in. But yeah, in general, I feel pretty good. Like there's no complaints. Well, there's some complaints, but I'm aware that they're very first world problems. So I have a limit with shutting myself up. But yeah, in general, I think I'm totally healed. I'm spiritually enlightened. You don't have any problems whatsoever, ever, ever in life. So yeah. Uh, but I'd say my journey is actually very much tied to my heritage. Like one of my granddads ran a circus, and my other granddad was a healer. So I'm really just living out my genetics.
um, you said a very interesting thing, that being a comedian, you gotta be selfish. You gotta talk about just about yourself. But I'm finding your comedy very contemplative and very educative. Like you have this super funny bit about micro penises.
That's
I
very
love this
contemplative,
one.
isn't it?
And in this bit, you actually talk about there's so much compassion and empathy to other people.
Well, it
Would you
takes one
like
to
to
know one.
elaborate on this one?
Well, I would say like now, like I did a plant journey, and I guess before when I was a comedian, and this ties into this whole idea of initiation and rites of passage, where I would say before the healing path, I was very much stuck in this boy, immature frame of mind, which a lot of people are these days, and the sort of defining characteristics of that is like you're very self-involved and it's all about you and it's all about what you want out of the world. It's there's no attention to the collective. But I'd say that this 7 year healing path that I went through was sort of a self-initiation process where, I suddenly was like, holy shit, I'm part of this collective mess. And what can I do to sort of leave the world a better place than before? And so, I guess one of my gifts is comedy. So now I've come back into it, where it's like, okay, how can I use comedy as like a way to sort of heal or help people not feel alone with their micro penises, and how to I don't know, how to use the skills to like you know improve or help people basically. So I found that if my aim is sort of orientated towards helping the collective, then you can't lose, really.
Mhm.
Whereas if it's very selfish, which, and I'm not criticizing other comedians. I mean, we're all just doing the best we can, but it can be very selfish. Like you're just trying to do it to become famous and be a star, and not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's very. But now I feel like after what I've been through, I'm like, okay, how can I use this as a tool to like, you know, lift awareness or raise consciousness, or I mean, that's very highfalutin for someone who still does a whole bunch of masturbation jokes, but I'm trying to, I'm trying to, I don't know, use it as a way to sort of, I guess, reveal truth, or
Mhm.
um, bring into perspectives that people aren't aware of that I feel like they should. And I had this peyote journey where he was very clear to me about like, um, like every creative act I think is a form of channeling, in its purest sense. So I'm trying to channel something that's beyond me now, which is, very ambitious, but like the trick is now just getting out of the way. But I feel like after all the work that I've done, I am able to do that now a bit more effectively. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a core of essence of what I would like to talk about with you. That I would like to. You just said it. I would like to go beyond of the channel that I am right now. That's we named this project Beyond the Courage. And how do you understand that going beyond of we are capable of right now, and
I
what
think you,
tools we can use to, like, we have psychedelics, right? I would like to talk with you more about these tools, but
yeah,
how
I
can we
think
go
it's just,
beyond in general?
I think it's getting out of the way of yourself, which is like really hard
Hmm.
because it's getting beyond the mind. You know, we're very much in a mind-centric culture, and a lot of my work beyond the psychedelics was also just getting back into my body, like this whole idea of whole body consciousness, you know, instead of being trapped in the mind and being very intellectual. And there's many ways to get out of that, but like it's basically flow states and getting into trance states or places where you lose yourself. And, you know, for some people, that's extreme sports, you know, athletes can get into a flow state. And once they get out of the way, and, you know, part of my healing journey was to do martial arts. And I started, you know, watching, I went to Thailand to do Muay Thai, and I was watching these Muay Thai fights. And you saw the guys who won. They were in this sort of very focused flow state. They weren't thinking anymore. And comedy is the same. Like the best gigs you do are the ones you have no memory of, and you're totally in sync, you know? So to go beyond yourself, you have to really transcend your mental box. Like a lot of my plant medicine journey as well was showing me that how I defined myself in my mind was really limited, you know? And it's a sad thing that a lot of us are actually in mental prisons of programs and ideas of ourselves. And I'm by no means free of that. I still have these preconceived notions of myself that I realize are not actually. So it's weird. Like the ego is like a reducing valve that you kind of need to operate in the world, but at some point you also need to realize that that's not the be all and end all of yourself, and that to some degree, if you're someone who's sort of in the spiritual journey, you are a sort of channel for a greater energy, and at that point, it's just yeah. There's millions of techniques on how to get out of yourself, basically. But I guess the ones that I've personally found useful are definitely embodiment, qigong, martial arts, that sort of stuff, and plant medicines, and then just trance states. You know, just trying to get into not ordinary states of consciousness. Which is something that the West has definitely lost um, the art of, but that we're remembering a lot more now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's superbly well put. So what are you mainly focusing right now on? Is it comedy, or is it your mental state, or going beyond, transcending ego?
I think I concentrated on my mental state for long enough now. So, I mostly it's comedy at the moment. Like I'm just trying to get my enough material together for a show for 2026. And so that's become kind of my martial arts in a way, my practice. Um, so yeah, I'm just really focusing on getting those gigs done, and yeah, I had to take a break from the medicine work because I was coming out publicly as someone who's done that in the past, and because it's illegal, I can't really do it anymore if I'm trying to be a public persona. So um, yeah, it's mostly comedy at the moment, and I wrote a book as well, so I'm trying to just do all the because back when I was a comedian in the first round, I didn't do any of the actual admin, and so this time around, I've hired a producer, and we're trying to get get stuff out there, and you know, build a profile, build an audience, basically. So that's kind of the main. And yeah, I'm starting this podcast up, so I'm trying to work out what I want to put out there for this podcast, and yeah, that's the main brunt of my activity. And then, you know, in November, I'm going to sit down and try and I've got the pieces of the second book that I'm working on, so I'm going to sit down and just try and crack that out as well. Yeah.
Yeah, your podcast is called the Bridges, Maps, and Medicine podcast, right? Uh,
That was the first incarnation, but like you probably know this, but you're much better at it, obviously, because you've had this going for a while. But you know, you do a few podcasts and then you just sort of drift off. So this time I'm going to be a bit more focused because I have a bit more of a goal in sight, and I've hired a producer. So I actually haven't worked out what this one's called yet, but I've interviewed like a bunch of people now, and it's sort of like we're in an experimental phase where I'm really, interviewing Indigenous people in Australia, and then I interviewed a guy on rites of passage, some medicine people, wisdom keepers, and then comedians, and so it's all a bit of a big crock pot at the moment. So I'm not sure what the end product is going to look like, but I'm just sort of trial and error, and then we'll see what's rating, and then I guess we'll zero in on that. Yeah.
Okay. You also mentioned in your bio that you are a failed cult leader. Which cult have you failed? We are
Oh well, that
fascinating.
was just
Maybe you can reactivating and we can open the branch here in Chicago.
well. I mean, now is a very ripe time for cults, and I'm living on the Northern Rivers area near Byron Bay, and there is a lot of cults here. Um, there's a lot of wannabe cult leaders, and there's a lot of wannabe cult followers. So now's a good time for cults because I guess all you need to be a cult leader is just more self-belief in your own bullshit, right? And a slight narcissism, personality orientation. But that was more of an inside joke because back when I was running ayahuasca, people very quickly will look at you like you're a guru. And I saw that a lot in the scene. You'd go drink ayahuasca or do plant medicine with people, and there was this weird cult dynamic happening sometimes in some of the circles I was in. So I used to joke that I was a failed cult leader because I didn't want the responsibility of being one. And also I was very aware of my frailties so people would want me to be the guru because I've got the beard and the Asian thing going. but but I would very quickly disappoint them with my with human feelings. So yeah, but I don't know. I might try and start up the cult thing again because it's a funny angle to take, and I've been watching all these influences online and trying to work out, okay, how does this all fit? So yeah.
Yeah, it's a super funny thing, being a cult leader and doing a comedy. Of course, we know it's a joke, and yeah. Um, Before we start our conversation today, I was listening to your podcast. You were talking about Iboga.
Yep.
You were actually like 15 hours in this experience. It was wearing off a little bit, and you started
Uh,
recording.
oh, did I?
That's what you said on the podcast.
Okay, I will have to agree. Yeah, okay. I had no idea. Um, yeah, yeah. Iboga is a West African plant. People say it's technically not a psychedelic because it works in a different way. Some people call it a remedelic because they've done brain scans on people on Iboga, and essentially, you have the same brainwave patterns as a lucid dream state. Actually, no. Apparently, you have the same brainwave patterns as REM sleep in a fetus. So it's a very interesting plant. It's from Africa. Over there, they see it as the tree of life or the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And I've had full morality lectures from this plant. If you don't believe in plant spirits, that's fine. But for me, I've definitely had communications with this plant, and it's definitely one of my top favorite. I mean, I love them all, but um, after I was working with ayahuasca, I managed to source this plant and sit in a ceremony with this plant, and it was incredibly powerful, profound, and harrowing. It's an ordeal plant. So in Africa, they use it as a rites of passage into adulthood, and I would say I never knew a plant could make you grow the fuck up, but it really did make me realize what it means to be. I mean, I'm still getting there, don't get me wrong. I'm still very much um, not a full adult in some respects, but yeah, it's a very powerful plant. It's kind of like extreme shadow work. It's like it shows you everything about yourself and how you are in the world and who you are and how you came to be. And there's no escape. It's like that scene from Clockwork Orange where Alex has his eyeballs pinned open. Um, and yeah, it's also one of the few psychedelics you can actually die from due to prolonged QT intervals. That's your heartbeat stopping. So it's definitely not as popular as the other ones, but I highly recommend it if you find a good facilitator and if you've got deep unhealed childhood core wounds. Um, yeah, there's something about this plant which made me go, okay, there has to be a God because I don't know how that could be in a plant. Something as profound as that and something as psychotherapeutically healing that knew me better than I did. That just convinced me of the existence of some kind of higher creative intelligence.
Yeah, I'm asking about iboga because it's calling me very heavy. I got a lot of psychedelic experiences myself, close to 100, I would say.
Okay.
But this one is calling me very heavy, and I heard it's extremely effective for like resetting the whole nervous system, right? Very
It is the
effective for
deepest
addiction.
reset
Yeah.
I've ever had. Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's amazing plant. I can't speak highly enough of it. Having said that, it is like very confrontational. They say he's the truth, because essentially what he does is he puts you back into your body. And Western consciousness is very disembodied. We're very much stuck in our heads and our brains. And so this this my Iboga facilitator, um, she would say that it grounds you back into your body. It earths the electrical charge, the bioelectrical energies of the human body. It earths it into back into earth. So I mean, it's a root, so it's basically in the ground. So um, yeah, what it did for me was it just grounded me in back into my body. Um, because, a lot of us, in order to escape the pain of being human, are forever, bypassing our ways into spiritual realms or the realms of thought. Even being stuck in the mind is a way of bypassing earthly existence, and it's ultimately a control system. The mind, it runs on fear, from my understanding. And so, yeah, it's incredible, and I mean, it's famous for addiction breaking, and I have seen literally an ibogaine treatment that I sat in on for an old friend. I saw this guy that I hadn't had a proper conversation with for 15 years because he was just so um, ruined by heroin. I saw him in 8 days go back to the guy I knew in high school. I could actually have a conversation with him. So it's a really amazing plant for that. But people don't realize that the way it cures addiction is a byproduct of its overall facility. And now they're actually even finding out that it's really effective for treating people with Parkinson's disease. Like you can basically get a guy in a wheelchair, and within 2 weeks of microdosing a burger, he's riding a bike and moving around. So
Wow.
it's really an incredible medicine. It hits every neurotransmitter network in your brain, and the fact that it's not really well known or has this big aura of fear around it, I think is very interesting, and it's not for everyone for sure, but if you're interested, man, I can't recommend it enough. As long as you find a good, experienced um, shaman or facilitator, because it's definitely not something you'd want to try by yourself. And when I first tried it by myself, it was just from some bark I sourced off the internet, and I ended up in hospital. So,
Oh
you know,
wow.
yeah, be careful. He's a strict teacher.
I love what you said. I also find it very funny. I like the dark sense of humor. You said that it can stop your heart, and the next sentence you said, I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Well, the burger has a very dark sense of humor. I mean, I can't say that he does that, but I mean, obviously these are all plant energies and sort of intelligences which are interacting with my particular system, but definitely during the darkest moments of my journey, he would always pull up some kind of joke, and I'd laugh in spite of myself. So he's definitely got some kind of strange sense of humor for
Mhm.
sure.
Would you say that all those uh, plant medicines help you being more funny and and being more entertaining for people and for yourself as well. I'm asking also your relation with yourself.
It's interesting because I've been thinking about this a lot myself because like coming back into comedy, I'd say it's mixed. I'd say like because as you change, you have to find new ways of being funny. So I was funny back in the day when I was fucked up, but it's not a sustainable kind of funny. And also, I'm older now. I'm like 42, so I have to find like older forms of comedy which suit my
Mhm.
age. While when you're 20, you can be sort of quite funny, and because you're sort of got this new energy, this innocence and hope. So now, like, I feel like it has helped me become funnier, like, in terms that like my energy's better, and for the comedy that I want to do, which can at times be, based in truth and a bit confronting and kind of dark sometimes, because that's life. Your energy actually needs to be good. Like, if your energy is shit and you're coming on saying dark things, then people just get depressed, and that's not very funny. So I found that um, that has helped improve me because I've got less baggage now when I'm on stage. And also, I used to sabotage myself a lot. There was a lot of, yeah, just a lot of self-esteem issues. And to some degree, like, comedians do have to be fucked up. Well, actually, I'll take that back. It does help for a comedian to have some demons, but it's like a balance. You can have too many demons and then you just don't get anywhere, or you can have too little demons and I don't know, you're just not funny enough. So, I don't say that you have to be fucked up to be funny, but it helps to have a little bit of that because it kind of makes you more human in a way. The last thing you want to do is see some guy who's got his shit together on stage talking about how great he's doing because like I don't care about that. Um, it's not real. And and comedy comes from, I wouldn't say pain necessarily, but conflict of some kind. But back to your question, yeah, I think a lot of comedy relies on other perspectives, like or breaking frame, basically finding another way to look at things. And definitely plants can help you look at things from a new perspective. Having said that, if when I first started doing comedy again last year, I found there was a big process on me learning how to relate to people again on a very earthly level. And because I'd been sort of in the psychedelic spirit world for 7 years straight, that was very rocky in the beginning because it was like, how the fuck do I talk to normal people again? Um, and I wasn't actually very relatable at all. I was like, hey, you guys ever gone to the land of the dead and met your ancestors? And people like, what the fuck are you talking about? And, have you ever had a midlife crisis while, running a ceremony, you know, and trying to help someone through an exorcism? And you're like, what the fuck? And so it was like a big process of me going, okay, I have to learn how to walk one foot in each world. And also during the first part of the year, I was microdosing quite heavily. I wanted to see if I could break some old performance habits. And one of the traps you can get with the plants is thinking that you need something in order to be, in order just to be, or be better. And I fell into that trap a little bit in the beginning because I was so like, it was a big thing for me to come back into comedy. I was pretty freaked out. And so I was microdosing quite a lot of, iboga and mushrooms and getting on stage just to try and workshop new material. And then at one point I just stopped doing that. And I realized, oh, actually, I'm funnier without that stuff. That stuff was making me a bit too revved up and a bit too intense on stage. So, yeah, so it's a mixed answer there. But having said that, I just did like this Quechua San Pedro ceremony with some indigenous Peruvian shamans maybe a couple weeks ago, and the whole way through, even though it was a very earnest ceremony, it was like just 12-hour straight of prayer. I would just be thinking of punchlines all the way through, so I'd have to scribble all these sort of punchlines in my notebook, and some of them worked. So I think they can help you creatively if you're a bit stuck, but there is a cost to them as well. Yeah, definitely. If you rely on them too much, you don't want to cook yourself too much. I mean, I'm probably one to say that, but
You mentioned that you get to this point called in spiritual development, which is called dark night of the soul, right?
yeah,
A lot of
yeah.
people get to that point, and it's a very inconvenient place to be, right?
Yeah, I think inconvenient is a light statement.
It's a light,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, it's
yeah. It's
fucking
it's
horrible.
it's a horrible place to be. It's
Yeah, yeah, no, I've literally had just wanting to like just like um just die. Because like I used to be afraid of death, and then in these states, you're like, man, I'm gonna be so relieved when this is over. Like, yeah, it's horrible, but it's a necessary part of the process. And I wish I would have read this guy called Bill Plotkin a bit earlier because he talks about what he calls soul descent. So every time you move into the light, you end up dragging more of your darkness into the light. So there's this corresponding counter movement where you go up into the light and then you go down back into the soul, and you start excavating more and more shadow material. And then once that phase is over, you can then accommodate more light and anchor more spiritual energy. So it's like this. I always thought that the spiritual path for a lot of people was just like this onward ascent towards, I don't know, heaven on earth. But really, the reality, for at least for me and for a lot of my friends, is you go up for a while and then you go down, and each
Mhm.
descent is almost worse than the last one because you just feel more. So, you know, unfortunately, it's just part of the path. And I've been through, I don't know, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 serious ones. And now I'm better at it now because I think the main problem was when you're going through it, you're like, oh, this is going to go on forever. This is what it's going to be like forever. But now I'm like, okay, it's this again. I'm going to go just do some self-care or go sit in the woods for a while and wait it out, or go into it instead of trying to shy away from it. But yeah, every time it happens, I'm like, oh, this is shit.
But Nick, how do you view life in general? Like from your journey. Uh,
Oh, um,
I know it's a
well,
very complex and philosophical question, but I'm really
okay, well,
fascinated by way your view of life as of
yeah, I
today.
guess I view it as like, and I could be wrong. Um, I'm always prepared. Like when I finally actually die, and what I think is going to happen, it's something completely different. There's this comedy sketch that I saw by this guy called Dimitri Martin, and it's like, what happens when you die? And it's just this stupid circus clown dancing in a spotlight. So, you know, you know, and then all these people of various religions like dying, and then they all get the clown. So, that could be what happens. But my current working framework is that this is some kind of school, and this is a way to sort of process karma and learn lessons, and to basically develop your soul. Um, and that could be true, but at least what it does is it helps me frame hardship and suffering and painful experiences as a human being, instead of it just being. I'd say before I got on the healing path, I just thought we were in some meaningless void full of like nothingness and emptiness and pain and pleasure, which was, a sort of a very empty way to live life, and didn't really fulfill me on any level. So now I guess I see it as a sort of a testing ground, and from what I've experienced and researched, it's a place for you to sort of purify yourself and become a better version of yourself, and to, I don't know, just sort of live collectively. I very much like the whole bodhisattva idea. I wouldn't say that I am one, but like that whole idea of trying to live for something larger than yourself, basically. And yeah, yeah, I guess I see it as a school. And there's a really interesting comic book writer called Grant Morrison, and he had an alien abduction experience. And he basically was told by these aliens, which were made out of pure information, that you incarnate onto Earth because Earth has time. If you live outside in the world beyond the world, the spirit world, there's no time, so everything has already happened, is already happening, and has already happened. So it's like this, nothing grows because there's no time. So the whole universe is sort of like a crystal in a solution of time, and so we have to be basically injected into um, this sort of superstructure in order for us to develop and grow. Because when we're outside of that, we're the same. We don't develop. So that's my current working construct that I use to justify crashing my car, for example, on the highway.
Yeah, I love that what you said that it's life is school, right? It's at some point. Mhm.
Yeah.
And mhm. So what do you think is the future of comedy, of stand up, and of spirituality?
Oh man. Well, it's dependent on a few factors. Firstly, like, part of me getting into comedy, I was just like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I think COVID showed us how fragile our system is, and I'm expecting similar things like that happening in our lifetime. So I'm like, is this really what I should be doing? Like, getting back into fucking showbiz? Like, some of my other friends are like, fucking growing food and like, living the sustainable lifestyle on a farm somewhere. Um, so yeah, it's dependent on where comedy goes with that. Like I said, there's like it's hard to generalize about all of comedy, but like I did a big deep dive into comedy at the beginning of this year just to see where everything was at. And so it's changed like there's so much comedy now. There's never been so much comedy before. So I was like, why is there so much comedy now? Like this is unheard of. I just never realized. And I think part of it is because maybe after COVID, people wanted to feel not so alone anymore. And um people I don't know, it's like people are sort of looking to the clowns for information now, which is kind of dangerous in a way, but it also just shows you where we're at as a species, where there's so much mistrust of the media and you know the authorities that people are like, oh, I'm going to go watch the Daily Show to see what's happening in politics now, or Joe Rogan or Russell Brand. They're like, so it's weird that comedians have become like independent media outlets now, so that people trust more. So I see it like as a potential channel for some form of truth. The only problem is that we're fucking comedians, so like we're mostly kind of smart, but like not that smart. So it can be very problematic in that sense. And also, what's happened is that it's become very niche. So um, it seems like there's a comedian now for every genre of person out there. Like watching all the Netflix specials, it's like here's a gay black comedian for the gay black people, or here's the Asian comedian for the Asian people. So it's become very splintered. The mainstream sort of splintered now into 1,000 sort of niche channels, which makes things kind of there's more opportunity now in a way. But it's like comedy used to be very much about a shared worldview, and now that shared worldview has very much been destroyed. Everyone believes their own sort of reality tunnel. So I guess that's why comedy itself is also splintered as well, because it relies on generalized agreed truths about the world, but that's become highly disputed amongst many sections of the population. So that's how comedy has changed, in my opinion. It's just sort of branched out in multiple directions. And a lot of these people, like, they're definitely funny to their crowd, but I was like, oh, I don't really find them funny personally. Like, some of them I did find funny, but other ones I was just like, I just don't relate to this person, and they wouldn't relate to me, and their crowd wouldn't relate to me, and that's fine. So yeah, I see that it's become much more specific and branched out. As for the future of comedy, I don't know. I mean, part of me came back to try and I want to try and talk about what's going on, what at least what I think what's going on, and yeah, I found that the average comedy audience is kind of just wants to run away or escape problems, or maybe I haven't worked out a way to deliver what I want to say effectively, so I can't blame the audience completely. But um, by and large, I definitely it was a big shock to see how disassociated the general populace was, because in my little bubble, my little healing medicine bubble, I was convinced that we're going through some kind of awakening, which we are, but it wasn't as big as I thought it was. So it really made me stop and go, okay, all right. And that's not to say that there is a portion of the population that are waking up and becoming receptive. And I guess that's what I'm trying to do now, is like trying to find those people and trying to build an audience from that. And that could happen in the future. I got told very clearly when I was in the bush by myself that 3 years, I have to give it 3 years, and then by then, who knows, something could shift. You know, there's fucking alien hearings in the Senate, so all bets are off. So, um, yeah. So I guess that's where I think comedy's going. There's going to be a simultaneous shift towards people just wanting to shut down even more because they can't handle the overwhelm of how crazy everything is, and then a simultaneous shift towards like, hey, we need to talk about this because fucking shit's bananas right now. So there's not any one solid direction, is what I'm seeing now. It's like we're going through this process of separation, is what they call it in alchemy, where there's all this polarization. Everyone believes in different stuff, and I think that's just the times we're in. And everyone wants unification, but I don't think we can force that. I think there's going to be a natural process where we reach the end of this separation and polarization process, and then I don't know how long that's going to take. But in the meantime, I'm going to make jokes about it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting what you just said. But I think that comedy could be like a unification factor for us, right? Because people are so diversified nowadays. Would you agree that comedy is the best tool and the most effective tool to transcend a lot of or most of cultural taboo in our culture?
It can be if it's done well. I'm in two camps for that. Like, it is said that one of the best compliments you can have as a comedian from an audience member is like, I didn't agree with you, but I thought it was funny. So, you know, but I would also say that if you can make someone laugh, you're more likely to be able to change their point of view. And I know that was me listening to people like Bill Hicks and um, you know,
I love Bill
Doug
Hicks. Yeah,
Stanhope, people like that really
yeah, I
helped
love him as well.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah, helped me change my mind and educate me about a lot of stuff. So it's definitely a really great way to break down defense mechanisms. Um, Having said that, some of the best comedy I like is very divisive, actually. Like the funniest shows I've been in is where half the crowd are so disgusted they leave the room, and the other half are like laughing harder than they've ever laughed before. So my favorite comedians are like that. They
Mm.
they walk the room. So to some degree, I think some parts of the population, if I'm to be quite honest, I don't really have much hope for. Like I'm like, you know what? I think that's just them for this lifetime, and they're set in their ways, and and at some point you got to cut your losses and work out, okay, who do I actually want to play to, and um, yeah, I'm not for everyone, A lot of comedians aren't for everyone, and even the comedians who are, for everyone, they're not for me, and they're not for a lot of my friends who are like, oh, that's just boring. I don't really like that shit, So you can't be for everyone as a comedian, but in terms of crossing taboos, I think yeah, for sure, because a lot of the taboos are very um, need to be questioned. It's like why, and there's the basic taboos like homophobia and transphobia and little stuff like that, and then there's the counter taboos of like, well, why can't we joke about them? And then even swear words, I was thinking about the other day, like, why are they bad? I mean, it's because of some kind of Christian programming. I mean, all Western swear words are basically about you being an animal, a filthy animal, like it's shit, piss, fuck, um, cunt. They're all just basically genitals and bodily functions. And it's like, why is that actually offensive? Like, we all do that every day. Every one of us were the product of a couple people fucking. So, and now that's a really bad thing to say. And, the C word, I've already said it, so I don't know why I'm calling it the C word, but we all came out of one. So, why is that the worst thing to call someone? That's like the portal of creation
Mm.
and pleasure if you're a heterosexual man or a lesbian or a
Yeah.
woman. So yeah, you need to question taboos. I mean, a lot of them are just stupid and people love getting offended, People love getting offended. It's kind of it's like a high. So I think comedy is an amazing tool to reveal the stupidity of the human race. That's why I'm in it for, right?
Mm.
Because I don't know what else to do. It's like maybe that's what happened. Everything became so overwhelming and so fucked up. I was just like, man, I don't know what else to do but just to try and write jokes about this because I'm not coping. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Like before recording the podcast with you, I talked to Grace Love. She's also from Australia, and we were laughing like crazy. that most of the humanity is hypnotized by the mainstream culture, and maybe we should just hypnotize them even more and start dominating the world. I'm talking about
Yeah.
comedians, which are, and there's more and more people listening and watching the comedy, which you mentioned. So maybe there is a hope, right?
Yeah, no, there's hope. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not pessimistic at all. Like, I'm more open, curious because I have no idea what's going to happen. I have my predictions based on what I know now, but I also know there's unknown variables involved, and especially I don't know if you've been paying attention to the UAP, the alien hearings in the Washington Senate. When that stuff started coming through, I was like, okay, this has to be a cosmic joke. On top of everything with like the AI apocalypse stuff, and there's so many possible things that could basically end our world, and now they're bringing in high-placed military whistleblowers in the Washington Senate, like testifying. Yeah, I've seen UFOs and aliens. I'm like, what the fuck? So, I was like, this has to be a joke. So yeah, I actually do feel like one of my ideas is alongside the school, this is actually just a reality television show for higher forms of
Like a
higher
Truman Show.
intelligence.
Like a,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
the
an
movie.
alien reality TV show, and they were just getting bored because it was the same show. And then somewhere like 10 years ago, they were like, "All right, we'll elect a clown as a president, and we'll turn up the knob on the climate, and we'll throw in some robots which are becoming self-aware, and now we'll chuck in some aliens, and let's just shake up the snow globe and see what happens." And now it's quite entertaining. They're like, "Okay, this is very interesting now. I'm not bored anymore. Let's renew it for another season." And I actually had a friend who did a boga, and he met some kind of like deity on it. And one thing about a boga is you can ask questions to the boga spirit or to higher order entities you might meet on it, and you're meant to get very truthful answers. So he asked this it might have been a boga, I can't remember exactly, but he asked this very powerful deity, okay, what's the deal with the Earth realm? Like, what's going on here? And he got told that this was like Windows 2.0. Like, this was like like an early version of the simulation, and apparently these higher order deity intelligences, created beings who made it, were like, "Oh, this has got a lot of glitches and it's pretty fucked up, but it's kind of interesting to watch, so we'll just let it run." But they told him that we've got much more efficient and better running simulations out there. You guys were just an early model. But we've done a lot of work since then, and now we're like up to the iPhone like 50,000, but you guys are still like iPhone 1. So I kind of like that idea too.
I love that
Explains a
idea.
lot.
It's super funny.
Yeah. So as much as I'm saying, oh, this is a school, you don't know how much of this is just down to managerial incompetence.
Mm. But maybe we designed this school and maybe we put ourselves willingly into this experience, right? It's also possible because
Yeah.
everything
I
is
mean, I,
possible.
I took this super high dose of acacia, which is like this DMT plant, and I got shown this like idea of like the Sims, like our higher selves are like these like enlightened beings, and then we're trying to control our Earth sim bodies, but like the controls really suck. We're like, no, what are you doing? Don't sleep with that person again. Why are you getting into that kind of relationship? Why are you fucking that up? So it's like this disconnect between like these higher selves, and then I don't know. It could be a total recall sort of scenario happening. I have no idea.
Yeah, but I think we both agree that life is a one huge practical joke, right?
I'm pretty sure that
Yeah.
when I do die, that it's going to be some kind of pullback reveal, and I will laugh. There will be some kind of. I mean, on that same trip, the Acacia told me that life is a joke, but you have to take it seriously, otherwise it's not funny. So it's some kind of paradox. I mean, the universe speaks in paradox and riddles, so it's some kind of joke. It has to be. Yeah.
I hope that when we die, or I would say we went through the process of death, we'd be laughing like forever, like what we done here as humans.
I think so.
Uh,
I mean, it is pretty funny. It just depends on how like the view you have. Like the long shot is always funny. The close up is always tragedy. So,
yeah.
a lot of slapstick comedy, you're always pulling back and you're seeing, some guy in the distance crashing his bike. But if you want to see a tragedy, you zoom up on the guy's facial expressions as he's weeping. Although some people might find that funny. Help or die. Like basically, you got to live for other people. Your selfish existence has an expiration date. So I ended up doing earthquake relief work, as I said before, and then I ended up working in this ghetto Mother Teresa home for the dying. So it's like this homeless shelter, but for people who are dying. And yeah, and then during one of my shifts, I was there for about a month, and it was fucking confronting. Like I was like literally wiping crap off dying homeless men's butts. That's to really
Wow.
put that. Um, and it was weird how normal that became after 10 days, but but it was very confronting and but also really really great. It was fucking powerful and like I think everybody in the West should do something like that because it just makes you go, holy shit, like what the fuck? Like this is life for people in some corners of the world. And
Yeah.
it made me remember what it felt like to be human. But anyway, the main point of the story is that like um I come into the shift one day, and then all of a sudden, the nurse is like, "Hey, there's a guy. He's dying. I think maybe you should hold his hand or something. He's having quite a rough time." And it was very normal for her because she'd been working there for like 20 years. So I go down and I sit with the guy, and yeah, I helped this guy die. I didn't even know his name, and it was not a pretty death. Like I realized a lot of us don't realize that we're actually alive. Like you walk around and people have like no fucking idea of what it means to be alive. Just how weird it is to be self-aware on the only inhabitable rock in the known universe, and then just to incarnate and be like actually a conscious being. I don't think a lot of people actually realize what that means until they die. And that's what I saw in this guy's eyes was him basically grappling with fucking existence because all of a sudden existence was ending and his eyes were just so wide and I was just like holding his hand and I was doing this Tibetan meditation technique called Tonglen where you're taking on the other person's energy, basically sort of trying to help a person if they're going through a lot of intense emotional experience. And so it triggered like this psychedelic experience in me. Like I wasn't seeing any visuals or anything like that, but it was like I was falling into a tunnel. Like I had the same sort of experience as if I was on DMT or something, which is allegedly what your brain releases when you die. And after this experience, I'd have to say there's some truth in that probably. And yeah, it was like this, but it was a Mother Teresa house, so they were very Christian people, so they didn't want him to die, even though it was clear that he was dying. And so they were trying to put him on the respirator, which was sort of keeping him stuck between dying and living this no man's land. It was very painful for him. And he was like just trying to get it out of his mouth the whole time. And so eventually the nurse left, and I sort of helped him take it out of his mouth because I was like, this is just horrible. Like
Oh,
this guy
wow.
wants to go, and yeah, I held his hand as he died, and it was like I just felt like I was tripping afterwards, and I remember feeling his chest, and it was like this. I could feel the energy. It was like literally like this ball of fizzing energy, and then 40 minutes later, we were at the crematorium, and we just put his body into the oven, and that was that. And I was just like, what the fuck? And I was so disorientated. Like it was such an intense day, and I remember walking out of the crematorium and everything looked like I was like, oh, this is definitely a simulation. Like everything looked like a cardboard set out, but a cardboard cut out like a film set. Even though I was in a busy Kolkata street, I was just so like, this is just totally not real. Like really realized that this was a dream. This was like a solid dream that was sort of created by collective belief, or collective investment in the shared hallucination that is reality. And yeah, I was just like, what the fuck? I was just walking around so disorientated, and I went back to my aunt's house, and I thought, you know what? I was gonna go see the new Star Wars. I'll go see it anyway. So I went and saw Star Wars. I didn't know what else to do. I was like, it's either that or sit in my bedroom and brood morbidly
Yeah.
about. And so I went to see Star Wars, and in the middle of the um of the movie, I had this fucking flash. I don't know what reactivation of my ayahuasca journey, like a probably like 9 months previous to that. But it was stuff that I didn't remember from the ayahuasca journey, but it was pretty much just a full scale download in the movie theater. And I heard these voices both inside and outside of my head. Uh, One said, "You work for us now." And the other one said, "Remember what we told you." And then that's when I had this whole reactivation of basically this download about this spiritual battle that reality is apparently in right now. And you got to pick a side and you can't sit on a fence anymore. And yeah, that's kind of it. And I just got this big download about how there were sort of forces in the world that were out of balance, and that you needed to sort of begin the process of firstly extracting yourself from those forces to the best of your abilities, and then secondly trying to form a counter movement against that. And yeah, I was almost shown like the spiritual reality of this world sort of taken over by dark energies or malefic spirits. And then yeah, they you needed. I got recruited basically, and then I walked out of the movie theater going, okay, I think I've just had a psychotic break or something, because that was pretty fucking weird. And now I still view it like, okay, that was a pretty weird experience. I mean, um, I question the reality that the narrative that I was given in that state, but I also still feel like it's quite relevant, and if anything, even more so now with what's going down, because this is all pre-COVID and pre everything. But yeah, after that, I'm like, you know what? Sometimes I really do feel like this is a spiritual battle, and what's happening on Earth is just a reflection of higher dimensional issues. So yeah, that's probably one of the weirdest things that has happened to me, but there's been a bunch for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that story. That's a very beautiful, deep story. And you said I went to see the Star Wars movie anyway, but that probably helped you integrate that experience, right?
It was when Han Solo got killed by his son. That's when I was like, ugh. You know, but that's why I think the universe has a sense of humor, because I'm like, why did that
Yeah.
have to happen in Star Wars, And obviously the download I got was heavily colored by the whole Star Wars narrative, light versus dark and all that sort of stuff. So, I hold it with a grain of salt, but I still feel like it's quite relevant sometimes. And I guess that's our contemporary myth, all Star Wars. That's we don't have Gilgamesh anymore or the Upanishads. We have Lord of the Rings and Star Wars.
I spend a lot of time with homeless people in my life. I've seen many things which you just mentioned. How how diversified life is, um, how about if we are gods? You are a god creating that all of this, that we are not enslaved here. We just decided to have another. Some people say, that infinity is a really long time, and that being human is a holiday from infinity, right? How about if we decided to put ourselves into that experience on this planet, uh, just to have more fun or learn more empathy or whatever it is beyond of all of this craziness and
Yeah, well, that's
uh,
that's totally valid as well, because like,
mm,
you know, I guess you kind of have to create your own meaning, your own narrative, and then whatever that is, then you end up living it, right? And so, yeah, and there's something to be said, like, what's a good movie? A good movie has to have some kind of conflict and some kind of ups and downs, otherwise it's just fucking boring. So, maybe we downloaded ourselves into this to experience all the ups and downs, just to give us some variance for when we go back to the eternal. And yeah, for sure, there's very enjoyable things about this realm, and I've definitely in the past I've been trapped into focusing too much on the negatives and all the problems, and that's horrible as well. You can spend your whole life processing and on the healing path and dealing with your trauma, and that's really an unpleasant way to live. And it's quite common in the healing scene. You know, you can really get stuck on the merry-go-round. Um, but yeah, nowadays I am really trying to be conscious of like everything that's good in the world as well. And you know, I fucking had a pretty good sandwich yesterday. So so there's the pleasurable aspect to especially right now. I mean, this is probably the only age where we've had everything at our fingertips like this easily. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I remember I was in Sydney recently and I had like Mexican for lunch and then Japanese for dinner. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is like, this is crazy. Like, I'm having, yeah. I remember I had a Mexican food at Uluru, like in the center of Australia. Just going, what is Mexican food doing in the center of Australia? Like, the amount of resources that were needed just to make this burrito. I couldn't even pay for cash. They'd gone beyond cash. And I was just like, that's so ironic. This is how it used to be here before colonization. Now we've just sort of gone back. So, yeah, for real. No, I mean, I think I'm definitely not. I think what I've seen sometimes, which is a problem, is people being so certain about their point of view, and that just creates a lot of problems. So I hold everything with a grain of salt. Otherwise, you can turn into a fanatic, and no one wants to hang out with a fanatic. It's a bit boring, annoying.
But do you feel as a god sometimes? Do you think that you created all of this and you are just playing with yourself?
Um, I hear you get that if you do 5-MeO. I haven't done that one yet. I feel
I've done
like
it a couple times. This is really amazing
okay,
experience.
yeah, yeah. I'm edging
Yeah.
towards it, but
Mm,
I'm trying to
mm.
wait till I'm cold. But I guess if I was a god, because of my path as a comedian, it's kind of like the path of continual humiliation. So I feel like maybe I was like a really arrogant god, and then this whole human life has just been this like ego beating. Like just like, oh, you think you're good, do you? All right, well, fucking slap, slap, slap. So yeah, I think the kind of god I was maybe like a bit of a dick god, and then I've had to sort of become a comedian to basically be ritually humiliated uh, on a consistent basis. So yeah, I'd say I'd never felt like a Zeus kind of god, like the all-encompassing kind of god. It's been more of a trickster god that I think I would sort of identify with more than anything. But again, I haven't done Toad yet, so maybe when I do Toad, I'll be like, "Yo, Rob, totally understand what you mean." But I think it's a bit too serious that sort of take on me, and I wouldn't be able to do that without making fun of that.
Why do you think you haven't done it yet? Is it ego is so scared of dying, or what's the
I
reason
had a
behind
really
it?
negative experience smoking crystal DMT that was so
Mm,
terrifying that
mhm.
anytime I see a
But that's a
crack pipe,
completely different experience. The
I know, but
NNDMT.
like I just
Mm.
maybe this is a good thing, but when someone offers me a crack pipe full of psychedelics, I just get this fear reaction. So so I don't know, I think that is proof that God has some kind of sense of humor. If in order to reach this unified consciousness state, you do have to smoke a crack pipe. Like God comes in a crack pipe, but yeah, I think it's PTSD from that experience because that was so overwhelming because it was a really big dose. So I actually did go into the whiteness, like the white light, but I
Mm.
wasn't ready, and so I had this full freak out, and I remember my last thought was like, oh, no, I've done it. I broke my brain, and then it was just white light and total fear and inability to let go, and then yeah, since that day, I've been unable to smoke a crack pipe. But um, having said that, it's calling me. I'm just waiting for the right opportunity. I'm waiting for it to come in, and also because uh, I drank a lot of ayahuasca on my path, I was really getting taken a lot out of my body, and so I remember I was either going to try 5-MeO toad or a boga, and then the guy I was going to do 5-MeO with tragically died in a car accident. So I was like, oh shit, okay, well I guess
Mhm.
I gotta do a boga, and I got this very specific message about a boga, like you gotta come back into your body because until you come back into your body, if you keep leaving your body, you're gonna go crazy. So yeah, so I'm careful with that one because my whole journey has been about coming back into the body, and so I really like being in my body now when before I didn't. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna just wait for the right opportunity. But it's definitely been presenting itself like around the corners of my vision a lot. Um, just waiting for the right guy.
But I think you are doing great, and celebrating you is a pure pleasure. Yesterday I've seen your video about that attention span, the one you recorded in the car.
Yeah,
That people should run away from the attention span drop from 12 seconds to 8. What's next, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's really superbly funny. I was laughing for like 20 minutes.
Oh, I'm glad.
Uh,
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to work out now. It's like I'm on Instagram. I'm on everything that I used to hate and rail against. So it's like, how do I do this without becoming everything that I hate? Like, what do I put out there? How do I not add to the noise? How do I cut through the noise? So that's what I'm trying to work out. Yeah.
you also wrote a book recently, No More Tripping, right?
Yeah.
Was it a challenge for you to write this book? And can you tell us about? Can you elaborate more about the book? I love
Yeah. Well,
By the way, I love the review. You do your own review on the book, which is so uniquely funny and original. Who is this book for? I don't know.
okay. That was my producer. My producer gave me a list of questions and he was like, "You need to answer these questions and tell people about the book." So I was like, "All right." And then my friend gave me that stupid purple pants and the purple jumper, and so I was like, "Okay,
Yeah,
I'll just
I
dress."
love the outfit. Yeah, that's such beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. The book was basically during the first 3 years of my self-initiation ayahuasca phase. That was where I was drinking a lot of ayahuasca. Like, I don't recommend it. I just met a shaman, a sort of DIY shaman, and I was like, "So how do you do this?" Because I've been called to do this work, and he's like, "Well, I just drank ayahuasca every week for about a year, and that's how I learned." And I was like, "All right, well then that's what I'll do." And so, yeah, I went into this very 2018, which felt like maybe 5 years in one. Just went into this extended process of trying to work through my stuff by myself, which is, tricky to say the least. But the whole way I was sort of writing these blogs for integration and just trying to make sense of all this crazy phenomena that was happening to me because I was really sort of going into my unconscious and a lot of archetypal shadow work, opening up into the spirit world, suddenly having to learn how to swim in this unknown place. So I was keeping these blogs, and then maybe after 3 years, I had like 800 pages,
Oh wow.
and my teacher slash friend slash facilitator friend was like, "Hey man, why don't you write a book?" So I was like, "Yeah, I really should." But there's so much material, man. I must have started and stopped like fucking 10 times, and so it took me 5 years to actually write. 3 years of
5 years?
editing. Yeah,
Oh.
well, 3 years of editing because 4 years of editing because like I gave up so many times, and then I gave up right at the end. I was just like, "Fuck this," I don't think I can turn this into a book because I was tripping when I wrote it, so it was very hard to make it into a chronological book. I mean, the first three chapters make sense because that's all about my adventures in Nepal and doing the charity work and learning all about that. And I was mostly pretty much straight for that period, and then the fourth part, whereas when I did the deep dive into psychology, just goes splat. So I was like, but then so I gave up, and then I went back like 4 months, and then I suddenly realized, oh shit, this is actually done. I've just realized this is the book. So then I just sort of cleaned it up, and then, but yeah, it was actually a very useful process for me therapeutically because it helped me firstly integrate that whole crazy period, and secondly, a whole bunch of issues that were I was sort of exploring in that book to do with self-esteem and self-worth that actually got cured in the writing of the book. And later on, when I was studying, I was reading Chuck Palahniuk, the guy who wrote Fight Club. I read his book about writing, and he said the same thing. He said, actually, writing this book resolved this issue for me. So I realized that there was actually a reward in the process itself. I actually was able to put something behind me, yeah, through that process. Yeah.
Are you open to write another book? Let's say about
Yeah,
comedy
yeah. Well, yes.
or
I should also just say that that book's funny. It's a funny book. The second book, I had all these. So after facilitating ayahuasca, I ended up facilitating a boga with a teacher friend of mine and also an associate facilitator. So the second book was all my about my work with a boga, and yeah, that's more. I guess it's a bit darker because it's all about. It's said that ayahuasca is very much about taking you into the higher realms, the cosmos, the cosmic self. While I say Iboga is very much taking you into the underworld, the roots of your being, and also clearing the skeletons out of the closet. So it's more about being on this earth and dark nights of the soul, because the Iboga very much was all about going into the darkness. And on top of that, I was chewing a lot of Iboga at the time, so it is a dreaming plant. And the interesting thing about Iboga is that he can sometimes affect physical reality. I know that sounds crazy, but um, if you eat enough of him, it's like a lot of weird shit just starts happening, like where you realize that the world is kind of like this solid dream. I mean, look, potentially I was tripping, but um, if you enter the Iboga realm enough, it's very much it made showed me this model of reality where we are in this solid dream. And if you read enough about indigenous mysticism, like all the shamans of the past could accomplish crazy feats of like non-ordinary reality and things which defied physics, like teleportation and um, transmutation, all crazy stuff. And it really made me wonder if this stuff was partly possible because they had much more of a lucid definition of reality. Well, nowadays we're stuck in the scientific materialist, very, very strict boundaries of reality. So maybe a lot of these things can't happen because our minds have said no, they can't happen, so they can't happen. Um, where am I going with this? But anyway, with the Boga, uh, at the same time I was receiving these plot lines to the book. Um, I would say they're visions, and again, this is another model of reality, and it was more of a comic model of reality. I'm not saying it's necessarily true, but it was one which I was encountering a lot of fallen angel type people. So I had this whole idea that was basically given to me while I was in this Iboga journey of this whole idea of the fall from grace. Like, because I don't know if you know this, but in heaven, a third of the host of angels rebelled against Yahweh, basically. So there was a third of the angels, led by Lucifer, were like, fuck this shit, let's try and mutiny
something
heaven.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that's quite a lot of people. That's like a third. There's some serious managerial issues going on in heaven for a third of the employees to be like, this boss sucks. So I had this whole plot where obviously the mutiny failed and we all got cast down onto Earth, like this prison planet as punishment. So the Gnostics, this is the Gnostic view that we're all cast onto this Earth um, as kind of punishment because we're kind of fallen angels. So I was kind of like researching a lot of the fall from grace and all these sort of descent into conscious matter mythologies, and I really got wrapped up in that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the book is half about like my time as an Iboga facilitator, where I was working with like heroin addicts and very people who seemed like they were carrying like heavy karmic curses, where you're like, fuck, what did you do to like deserve this life, like people like really and like people who are survivors of satanic ritual abuse, like extreme trauma, where I was like, whoa, like what, how could this happen to you, like why, what did like, and again, life is random and cruel sometimes, so I'm not saying that it was because they were fallen angels, but I had this plot come into my head where on the terrestrial plot of the book is like me as an Iboga facilitator entering this dream of a world and realize the world is a dream and working with all these very people with serious issues, and then there's a double plot where we're all angels and taking part in a failed rebellion against Yahweh. So it's a bit more of a complicated book, but I've enjoyed writing it, and it's yeah, I've tried to represent the fall from grace as a comedy, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil is of course a boga. So yeah, I was pretty obsessed with that plant for a while.
Yeah, I love that. The 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 fun fact is that yesterday you thought that we are recording this podcast yesterday, right?
Yeah.
That it was Saturday in Australia and Friday in Chicago. Now it's Sunday in Australia, so you come from the future, right? It's Saturday here.
Yeah. Nothing much has changed, I'm afraid.
How is the future? Tell us. Nothing.
It's underwhelming, but it's okay. It's okay. I won't be writing a negative Yelp review about it. I just want to write about it. It's doing all right, you know?
In one of your videos, you mentioned that you actually get rid of all the shame because you have to get naked in front of the bunch of the people. Remember this
Yeah.
one?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And how it happened? Like most of us would like to get rid to all of the shame we have within us, right?
Well, this is the
How how,
interesting
how
thing.
did it feel?
I was listening to this podcast about the fall from grace, like the Garden of Eden, and like if you listen to a lot of indigenous creation myths, they're usually quite nice. You know, they're about the humanity being the custodians of the world and being stewards, and coming from nature and maintaining this relationship with nature. But then I was listening to this. He was a shaman actually. Talk about the Western myth, which is the what happens. Adam and Eve get created, and then they realize they're naked, and they realize that they feel shame and guilt over being, you know, which is very unhealthy. That's embedded
Yeah,
in
yeah,
our
yeah. I
unconscious
agree to this.
archetypal psychology that basically we're
Mm.
born sinners. Luckily, I grew up more in a Tibetan Buddhist household, but for me, I had a lot of body shame because I was teased a lot in school, and in general, there's a lot of programs just you're taught to hate your body unless you're a fucking Men's Health supermodel or something. And so I was in Thailand doing a Muay Thai course, and I heard about this Tantra retreat, and so I just thought, yeah, fuck it. I've done all this fighting. I think I need to focus on this whole love aspect of my life. So, yeah, I went to this Tantra retreat, and yeah, I remember day three, one of the teachers was like, so have you guys done the naked thing yet? And I was like, what? And he was like, oh, you haven't done the nudity thing? And I was like, oh shit, okay. I was like, well, I kind of expected that thing to happen. And so, I was a fat kid, so I was always taught to hate my body, which again is another way to separate yourself, to create another split between your mind and your body. You can't be embodied if you hate your body. Um, and so what they would do was that you'd break up into small groups. And the first 5 days of the retreat were all about trust building. So it was you had a lot of safety. So if you straight away went into the nudity thing, I think a lot of people wouldn't be able to do it, you know? But day five, a lot of people were sort of trusted each other. So we did this ritualized nudity where you literally had to get up in front of this group of people and be like, remove a piece of clothing, and with each piece of clothing, you'd be like, "This is my shame," or and you talk about basically what you didn't like about your body in front of people while you were naked. Like, hey, I've got man tits and my penis isn't big enough, and everyone's just but I was crying, and so I was teased. I was taught that I hated my body, and um, it was very cathartic. It was very cathartic. I literally felt my consciousness drop deeper into my body
Wow.
because there was like a energetic blockage, from basically hating my body to this trauma that I'd accumulated over the years. And that was very powerful for me. Like that healed something in me that the plants couldn't have healed me, because this is where I realized healing is much more than just taking psychedelics. It's a lot of your wounds are relational. They're from people who've traumatized you, and so they can only really be healed in relation. So in group situations, or with a therapist, or with a loving partner. So um, after that happened, then the rest of the day we were kind of just wandering around naked, and people were dancing around. It's a bit of a weird scene. And then uh, and then there was another ritual which was called genital tritaka, which was the next day where you drunk cacao, and then there was an inside circle and an outside circle, and then you'd sit in front of someone, and then you just stare at their genitals for like 5 minutes to like new age music, I guess. I guess that's the kind of music you want to stare at someone's genitals with, not death metal or something. And, um,
I love
and
that.
man,
I
I
love
started
that
tripping
idea.
again. Like I wasn't on anything, but I was staring at this woman's yoni. That's what they call it in those circles. And I started seeing like planets and stars
Oh
and
wow,
solar systems
such
overlaid.
beautiful.
Yeah, I was just like, and I suddenly realized, oh, this is like the portal of all creation. You know,
Wow,
this is where we all
I
come
love
from.
that.
This is the entrance into existence. And then we switched partners, and I
And
was staring
also
at a
an
cock.
exit, right?
Yeah, and and an exit as well. Um, and yeah, and then we switched partners, and I was staring at a cock, and that was just a cock.
What
There's
kind
no
of music
mystifying that.
did you choose for this one?
Well, no, no, there was no choice involved, but I
There
did
was no
end up
choice.
staring at a lot of cocks that day. That um, but again,
Eh,
it's very healing because you just realize, oh yeah, this is
I
just
realize, yeah.
I'm naked, you're naked. This is just how I am. Like, there's nothing wrong about this. It's just like
Yeah,
doesn't mean you're a bad person, and yet it's really weird. It's really weird how this, especially with penis size, how did that happen? It's like the more meat you got down there, the more of a man you are, and it's very strange. It's very
yeah,
strange.
yeah.
And
Thank you for sharing that. That's a really. I think a lot of our viewers, listeners, can find it very appealing and
yeah, I
contemplative.
mean, I can go deeper into it. There's even more weird things that happen on that. Yeah, I don't know. This might be a bit weird for people, but like the thing which struck me about the Tantra teachers was they were so free and they were so openly loving and affectionate and really didn't give a fuck. I mean, it was funny because I'd spent time with the warriors, like the martial artists, and they didn't give a fuck either. Like you could tell because basically if you had an issue with them, they'd beat the fuck out of you. So there was a certain confidence that they had. Um, but there was a certain emotional, like, closed inness sometimes. But then the Tantra people, they had this open-heartedness um, that really blew me away. Like these people really didn't give a fuck. Um, and I had a good chat to one of the guys. I was like, "So, what is the process? Like, if you want to become free, like, what do you do? Break it down for me." And I'll never forget. He was like, "Firstly, you have to de-armor the anus." I was just like, "What?" And he goes, "Yes, for the man, the anus holds a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of tension, and a lot of programming, and you need to de-armor it. It's what they call as muscle armor. It's this guy called Wilhelm Reich. He created this terminology. It's basically concretized areas that block your energy flow. And for a lot of people, this is why you call someone a tight ass or uptight. So they literally have this blocked base chakra. And so for one of the exercises, which was optional, they're like, all right, with your partner, you can de-arm your anus. And I was just like, oh man, this is really confronting. Like, do I want to go through with this? And I had this huge fear about like, does this mean I'm gay? Like, but I just thought, you know what? I've come to a tantra retreat. I got to do it all. I got to fucking do it. And so, beneath the watchful eyes of a Buddha statue, um, I had my girlfriend de-armor my anus, and I have to say, he was right. There was a lot of guilt and shame up there, and I was like, I was crying. There was a big release. I wouldn't say
Wow.
it wasn't even sexual. Like it was like purely like a massage.
Yeah, yeah,
But
got you.
the energy flow changed after that. So, and that again brought me deeper into my body. So I was like, hats off to this dude. This guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, I wouldn't recommend it for everyone, but definitely, uh, it's a thing. It's a thing, and that changed. And yeah, afterwards, I realized I wasn't gay. I was definitely, if anything, I was like, how do gay guys do this like all the time? This is very invasive. It's off to the gay community. Like, I don't have my anus does not have the courage to go through with that all the time.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's a really awesome story. I love that. You're talking about the being gay. I watched your video today when you talk about man up and with this energy. And I was wearing sunglasses all day today. I was drinking all day, smoking and cursing. It didn't help at all.
Yeah.
Does it mean I'm gay, or what's the context here, right?
No, 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 no. I think everyone's a little bit gay these days, right? It's getting pretty fluid. I've got a whole joke about how I went to Thailand and I thought I was straight, but then I walked through the red light district and went down the Lady Boy Street, and I was like, I don't know anymore. I just don't know anymore. So, but yeah, definitely masculinity is changing, and my first one of my first interviews for my podcast was interviewing a guy who's all about exploring the modern masculinity and like what it means to be a man. And I think a lot of us are just confused. We're getting a lot of mixed messages, and there's a lot of pressure, and there's no real healthy role models. Well, very few. You got to really dig. And so, a lot
I
of it is
agree to
about
that.
balancing. Like, how
Mm.
do you be strong but vulnerable at the same time? And a lot of the time we go too much to one end. Like the usual guy is very closed up and like I wouldn't even say strong. It's more like brittle. He's just sort of like bracing himself against the world, and that often ends in like I don't think it's any coincidence that a lot of men die of heart disease and forms of cancer. I think that a lot of them are emotionally related. And then I'm living in Byron Bay where it's very hippie, and I'm not saying all, but a lot of men are almost too soft, and this is a problem where, it's too they're not resilient, they're too much in their feminine and not held by their own masculine. Then they don't know what it means to be. We don't know what it means to be a man now because every time you try and be a man, you get yelled at on the internet. So it's sort of this new space people are sort of trying to redefine and explore. So it's a confusing and exciting time to be a man, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Confusing and exciting in the same moment. Uh, what would you be your advice to average person how to be a more conscious, a better person nowadays?
Oh
More
shit.
loving, more
Um,
compassion, more have has more empathy.
well, I mean,
Understand. Mhm.
oh man, probably like move out of the city, go back in time to an indigenous community, pre-colonial days. Uh, um, yeah, build a time machine and move back in time to a pre-colonial indigenous tribe. I'm not saying that it would be a paradise, but I think you'd definitely be more connected on some level. Um, Obviously, I'm not trying to glorify them. There's a lot of intertribal warfare and pretty brutal practices as well. Um, this might not be for everyone, but I reckon definitely trying plant medicine can definitely. I don't care how much meditation you've done. There's certain places you can get to with plant medicine that I just don't know if you could get there without 30 years of meditation. And even then, I don't know if you'd be able to reach that. But I think everyone should at least once in their life try some kind of plant medicine, ayahuasca, San Pedro, because it just really does um, show you a frame of consciousness that I think is otherwise very difficult to reach unless you're like an enlightened yogi. Um, Especially in this day and age where samsara, I feel, is very dense and very thick. Like, we're in Kali Yuga where material reality is its most densest and attachment is its most fiercest, so it's very hard for people to reach that. So I feel like these plants are sort of, in some ways, a way to level the playing field. Having said that, then the real work is then how do I maintain an open heart in outside of plant medicines? Because, it's very easy to be open-hearted and give you a taste of what you're meant to be like all the time, but then you go back into a world where it's pretty disconnected and people are pretty, in general, unawake. And it's very hard to maintain that frequency when you're back in the matrix. So that's when the daily work begins, and I definitely found that if I'm living in a more of a switched on community, that's a lot easier to hold because you're with people who are on the same page as you. A lot of the problems I used to have with people who drink the medicine with me was afterwards they'd go back to their 9 to 5 job with or surrounded by, pretty much sleepwalking people, and it was very hard to maintain that thing. So yeah, a lot of it I feel is environmental. You got to change your environment to you are the product of your environment. So to some degree, you do have to design a life that can actually foster that sort of consciousness. Um, Nature time is very good as well. I found nature. I did a vision quest, and that was very powerful.
Oh, I heard
To
about Vision Quest. This is a superbly powerful experience, right? Can
Yeah,
can you
yeah,
can you share with us in a couple words what's the
yeah,
Vision
sure.
Quest?
Like, yeah, well, basically, so after my iboga thing, I took like maybe a year and a half break from all the plants because I reached the end of my plant medicine journey where I'm like, okay, I've gone as far as I can with the plants. I got to do all the other work. So I tried everything, the Tantra, the Muay Thai, and then the Vision Quest. And the Vision Quest was something I'd always wanted to try. I tried like my own style, like going out into the bush and just sitting there and not eating any food. But then I found this good lineage, Stalking Wolf lineage, Tom Brown guys. And I went and did a Vision Quest with them, which was 4 nights, 4 days, no food. We had water because we're in Australia, so it's quite hot. And there's litigation problems if someone dies of thirst.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know what? I got to a very similar place as I would with plant medicine. Actually, how I felt after was pretty much how I felt after an iboga retreat, which is a complete dopamine reset. I had a list of questions. I was having visionary dreams at night. I had full connection to source, I believe. Like I had all my questions answered, and I had a lot of clarity, and without the whole psychedelic destabilizing fireworks, which are great, but they can be a trap. So, and yeah, again, everything becomes a dream, sort of in a way. Everything becomes an omen. Like, you know, um, they say that when you're on a vision quest, you're getting messages from nature. Nature is communicating to you. So, I had a very powerful omen of a baby brown snake crawled across my bed. Luckily, I
Wow.
wasn't in my bed at the time. Brown snake is a very poisonous snake. Like if I'd been bitten, I would have been. It was kind of like a warning. And sure enough, after the vision quest, I went through this very dark night of the soul. It was kind of like a warning to me for that period, is what I believe. And then another message I had on that was I was in a mosquito net. We had a lot of mosquitoes where we were, and you have nothing to do. So there's periods of the vision quest where you're just fucking bored. And I just started killing the mosquitoes. I didn't even need to kill them. They were outside the mosquito net. They were just annoying me, and I was bored.
Oh yeah.
So,
Also, you had a mosquito net around you, right?
yeah, but I was just bored, and I was just constantly fixated on these
Mm.
mosquitoes. And then, so I was just like, just killing these mosquitoes pointlessly. And usually, I'm pretty Buddhist with taking lives of animals, but you know. And then I remember
Did you had
looking up, and
a
there
San
was
Pedro with at the beginning? Did you went to the sweat tent and did you had a San Pedro at the beginning or no?
no, 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 no. This was completely no medicine, just
Oh,
fasting.
no medicine because
Yeah.
I met a woman in Ecuador. In Ecuador, they give you you go to the sweat tent first, and they give you San Pedro for the first night, and then you sit for another 4 nights, and then they bring you fruits and San Pedro for the last
Oh,
night.
yeah, I've heard of that. I've also heard you doing peyote at the end of the Vision Quest, and that would be very
Yeah,
powerful, I'm
because your
sure.
body is so cleared out, and the peyote or San Pedro enhance your ability to get this message from the nature.
Yeah, no, no, I would totally understand that. And
Mm.
yeah, but yeah, with mosquitoes, they were biting me, and then I looked up, and there were fireflies basically drifting through the woods, and they were so beautiful. It was like a dream. And I got this very strong message going, "This is your problem, Nick. You're always focusing on the problems, but you're missing all the beauty
Oh,
everywhere. So why don't you focus on the beauty?"
oh.
So that's how the Vision Quest works. It shows you messages through nature, um, and you start reading nature like a dream, like interpreting a dream. So yeah, I highly recommend it for especially anyone who's done plant medicine. It showed me I could get to the same place, in a different way. So yeah,
That's a superbly powerful message. You always focus on problems instead of the beauty of the universe.
yeah, yeah. I'm still working on that one.
So, Nick, what's bring you the most joy and happiness in the core of essence of your heart today? What makes
Oh,
you most
geez.
fulfilled?
I think I know it's really corny, but like helping people, like
Mm.
that really. I almost feel like the source of my misery, source of a lot of people's misery is excessive self-focus, right? It's like, depression is very myopic. When I was very depressed, it was very much, me and my pain. Not that I'm devaluing people going through that because it is horrible, but like, yeah, actually assisting people in their healing processes back when I was facilitating was very, the healings that I witnessed, I was just like, they were really beautiful or powerful, and they brought me a lot of joy, like that I was just brought meaning into my life. Other than that, also just spending time in nature, like there's a certain joy that you get from just being alone in nature or with good friends or being silent in nature as well. I've really started embracing silence. Obviously not in this podcast because that'd be very boring, but yeah, and yeah, I guess that's the main stuff. And you know what? I don't know. I had a gelato the other day. That was pretty good. That brought me joy. Earthly pleasures are pretty good. Let's face it. Um, and yeah, I did San Pedro recently at a retreat, and I experienced a lot of joy in that as well. So, you know, yeah.
I love your open-mindedness and your sense of humor. So do you think that you will stay with comedy for now for good, or
Yeah. No,
there's a
I got
temptation to
very
coming back to a spiritual path and living comedy again?
well. I'm trying to unite the two because, like,
That's what I ask you. That you can unite the two. You have superbly talented talent to unite those two
yeah. I mean, it's
together.
it's it's a process, but I'm also
Hmm.
trying to like work out because the problem with spirituality is it can be very serious, and people take themselves very seriously, and I've definitely been guilty of that. I lost my sense of humor, firstly because of comedy, and then secondly, 2 years into the spiritual path, I was very boring and very serious, and that's why I kind of had this midlife crisis. I'd forgotten this part of me that was the Joker. So I'm trying to bring levity into the spiritual because it's easy to try and think of life as a spiritual thing all the time, but it actually does um, exclude like the grittiness of Earth life. Like you know, um, no matter how spiritual you are, you at some point you're gonna fart, and then what are you? You're like just a dirty ape. So I'm trying to find the balance. Like there's really great Bill Hicks jokes where he basically talks about how actually I don't want to destroy the joke. You should just look up the gray gym sock joke. It's my favorite joke of all time. It's basically
Okay.
he somehow combines the specialness of life with a masturbation joke, and it's this perfect combination of high spiritual and low dirty, and that's what I'm aiming for.
Wow, that's a really challenging sweet spot, right?
Well, it's
To
a
get
collapse of
there.
opposites. So,
Mm.
but there's also tantric yogis. There's famous stories of tantric yogis in India. This one guy called Talang Swami, and he went into the most famous temple of Shiva temple of Varanasi, and it was on the most holy Shiva day, and everyone was anointing the Shiva lingam with milk and honey, and he anointed the Shiva lingam with shit and piss, and people just freaked out and beat him, but he didn't respond because he was this enlightened yogi guy, and he merely pointed back at the statue, and it was now covered in milk and honey. Like he transmuted his shit and piss into milk and honey, and his whole message was like everything is sacred, everything is holy. There's no
Yep.
if you reach a high enough level, there's no difference between my shit and piss and holy milk and honey sacrament. So I haven't reached that level yet, but I like that story because it's kind of like it
I
shows
totally
you the,
agree.
the
I totally agree to that. There's no difference at all.
yeah.
And what is your approach to music? Like, do you love music? Do you listen to a lot of music on daily basis?
Yeah, of course. I love music. Music is again, this is one of the things which brings me joy, and one of the I feel
Hmm.
like, Earth is a heavy realm to be in. It's like the tough neighborhood. We all have to eat the corpse of living things in order to survive. It's pretty dark in some ways, but you have these things which I feel like are um sort of take the edge off, and that's music and comedy and art and lovely food
Nature.
and all the
You
earthly
mentioned
pleasures. They
nature,
take the
right?
edge off. They're a
Hmm.
balancing mechanism for all the darkness. So, yeah, music is definitely an amazing thing. And I have a wide variety of music tastes. Like, yeah, I listen to lots of different kinds of music. Yeah, I just, yeah, yeah, I love music. I just don't like shit music. That's like, I was at the gym yesterday and I'm like, man, this is the worst music I've ever heard. It's just like, I hate that music. I was just like, it was just, it kind of gave me like this negative motivation to lift weights because I was just like hating the music so much. It was like, it's a violent act, but pure, like I don't know. For me, really good music, it appears channeled from another place. You know, it doesn't, you can't feel the artist's ego in the music. That goes for any art, right? If you can feel the person trying to put their ego into the art, it just sucks. So the best music or the best comedy, it's like they're there, but they're not there, you know?
Yeah. Uh, at the end, I would like to ask you, what do you think about the technology, like which is picking up so fast right now? AI, quantum computers. Do you think that at some point AI will start writing funnier jokes, more twisted jokes than humans, or
I
maybe
actually
we can
asked,
combine with this technology somehow, augmented it within
well,
us?
I, funnily enough, I asked ChatGPT 4, I said, can you please write me a joke about the AI apocalypse? And its response was, um, I don't think this is a very funny topic to write a joke about, and this gives a disservice to everyone involved in the industry. Which I think is a pretty funny joke. I was like, what a great punchline. That's actually a really good punchline.
Mm.
Um, I've since asked certain AI things to write jokes, and the sad thing is that some of them actually do okay. Some of them I'm like, oh, that's actually a funny joke. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know if it's still going to have the soul of. I know that they designed a program to write musical melodies, and even though structurally they are melodies, they're missing that spark. Like they're missing the soul. So maybe that's with what might happen with AI written comedy. But if that happens, where AI is writing jokes for, we are living in a dystopia. So I don't know. I think with the technology, you know, we're a bunch of children with the power of gods, right? Without the moral compass. So I don't know. There's a chance that we might destroy ourselves, but in a larger time frame, maybe that's more of a birthing process. Maybe that's a necessary collapse for the new to come through. And there's a good book written by this guy called Christopher Bash called LSD in the Mind of the Universe, and he was taking high dose LSD for 20 years, and he had a whole vision about basically um, mass collapse of civilization, potentially due to technological and war, all that bad stuff. But it was kind of like the message he got from it was that that was just actually a birthing process, and then in that terrible um, process of mass suffering, that is actually what ends up um, uh, triggering the next evolutionary stage of humanity, and also forcing everyone to come together because you'd have no chance but to wake up if you were in a fucking post AI nuclear holocaust. There would be no denial at that point that things were pretty fucked. So I try and hold things in a deep time perspective because you know if you keep zooming out, you just there's cycles within cycles, you know, and then this is what the Vedics all believe that, you know, we can look at like 50 years, 100 years, but they're looking at like 20, 30, 40,000 year cycles. So what might seem like an apocalypse, which means great revealing anyway, could just be a minor triggering experience because things don't evolve if everyone's comfortable, right? There's no need to. So
Yeah.
evolution happens as a result of pressure. Um, so yeah, I've definitely had my share of like apocalyptic visions while going through my major plant medicine journey. But I kind of hold them with a pinch of salt. I hold all the visions I get now with a pinch of salt. But yeah, definitely, I think we're not evolving morally to keep up with the actual evolution of technology for sure. And a lot of it can potentially be used against us. And you know, you just see how much everyone's kind of been corrupted by the mobile phone in a way. It's so hard. Like I have trouble maintaining self-control. Like you've got this fucking highly addictive thing all the time. And, you know, if I go bush for 3 days, I have no phone, I feel so much better. Like my mind is clearer. Like things are just better. My brain works better. So I don't know. I don't know how we're gonna fucking navigate it. Yeah.
Uh, how about if we try to combine those technologies like psychedelics, AI, human, carbon, protein, internet, and everything else, nature, if we try to combine it into one and try to
Yeah,
create
I mean,
even
I
more
think you
amazing universe and more funny, more holistic,
yeah, but it has
uh,
to be tethered to like a
hilarious.
grounded source of being. So I think a lot of the problem with a lot of those technologies is they're not actually rooted in any grounded connection to Earth or idea of stewardship. And then back to the whole idea of rites of passage. Basically, everyone in Silicon Valley and down to world leaders are still stuck in the boy mode of being. So you've got boys with huge toys, basically. Um, and I was talking to this guy who specializes in like adulthood and definitions of what is a man and what is a boy. And boys want to live forever, and it's all about them, and they want to hold on to power. And so you look at everyone who is in the tech industry, what do they want to do? They want to go to Mars, they want to live forever, and they want to make more money. And I'm like, what are you fucking 8? You want to go to Mars? Like, so, or you want to install a Neuralink into your brain. And so, I don't know. I don't have the biggest hopes for until we grow emotionally. I don't think we're gonna. I think it's gonna end badly. Like, um, yeah, I think it's just playing with fire. We have no idea what we're playing with, and it's not grounded. It's not grounded in any connection to Earth or, you know, responsibility or accountability. So, yeah, I mean, it's a nice dream. I'd love for it to happen that way. But yeah, and it could happen, but I think we have to be connected back to the Earth again.
But if we look at this from the other perspective, that we are a children of Earth, and from the other end, we can create all this technology. And why is it like that? And the Earth is giving us psychedelics to bring that balance, and we bring the technology to hold this creation, this madness.
Oh
Maybe,
yeah, yep.
maybe, maybe, maybe that's the beauty and the magic of this balance, right? That was
Yeah, and
like
again,
the
like
essence of my question.
yeah, I mean, again, and this is where I'm like, I don't know, but this could just be part of a bigger cycle. Like, who knows? Maybe this is Earth's plan, and there's this idea that, in some ways we could see ourselves as like, a little bird fetus in an egg, which is just feeding off its yolk and using up all the resources, and has no forward planning that it's going to break out of the egg. It's just eating everything inside its egg, and then it just goes through this massive shift, breaks out of the egg, becomes a bird. So that could happen as well. And everything's nature. Even atom bombs and plastic are sort of nature if you think about it. So
Yeah, yeah,
who's to say
exactly.
that this process of separation isn't part of the grand plan as well? So, um, but I do feel like humanity is definitely pretty self-involved. The civilization, current civilization, and we are very disconnected and pretty, exploiting all the other animals on the world. So I feel like there's going to be some karmic payback for that shit. Hey, like I think we can. There's going to be some karma that we're gonna. It's going to be a bit of a slap. I find it hard to think that we're going to escape what we're doing. Uh, without a pretty heavy slap across the face. So, what that'll look like, I'm not sure. And again, there's going to be unknown variables. This is why I'm not pessimistic anymore. The aliens could come down and be like, all right, guys, we're taking over now. Now you work for us. Something like that could happen. I don't know. Um, I watched
Is
this
that
interesting
being
UFO
optimistic or pessimistic?
No, that's just more curious. Like, in my
Mm.
eyes, we've got the front row seats to the world's greatest show. Like, why wouldn't you want to be born right now? It's never been crazier. It's entertaining. No one's bored. Um,
Yeah, exactly. But
so yeah,
but
definitely. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. Go
And
ahead.
there's gonna be good points as well to the apocalypse. Like let's not be completely pessimistic. Like I was stuck in the Northern Rivers floods here, and which were pretty epic. Like the whole towns were basically destroyed, and it was a very beautiful. I mean, I'm not saying it was great, but it was a very beautiful coming together of the community. I got to see, okay, everyone became human again, you know. So there's going to be good things about the end of the world too. Like your life will have a lot of meaning all of a sudden. You know, it's not not gonna be bored. A lot of the existential malaise will be pretty much evaporated. Plus, I think, it'll be a lot easier to commit to a relationship in end of world times. And ugly people will probably be able to get with pretty hot people. I think standards would be pretty low. So, you know, yeah.
But maybe all those contradicting ideas and technologies will help us create even more outstanding jokes. Like, do you
Yeah.
feel that,
Yeah.
do you feel that you are at the very happy that you are the king of life right now, that you can be a comedian in this at this specific moment, at this specific life, and you have this freedom of expressing yourself on all those social medias? Isn't it
Ah,
beautiful, and isn't it amazing that you
King of
could go
Life. I've
to
never heard
from
that
being
before.
a comedian to go to the shaman and then come back to being comedian again, and we can freely talk about it?
Yeah, look, I'm very lucky.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, I'm trying to maintain gratitude at life, and it's crazy that I can live this life. This wouldn't be possible, if where my parents grew up in the fucking 1950s. I wouldn't have any of these opportunities. Um, Having said that, like, I don't have any financial security. Well, I have limited financial security at the moment, so um, I'm learning how to be in the world again. So that's definitely a challenge, like how to be spiritual within a material world, especially a late stage capitalist world. Um, but also having said that, like, going over my book, reading about people being in the earthquake and, you know, dying in a homeless shelter, I know how bad things can get as well. So total first world problems, you know. Yeah, but in terms of King of Life, I think I'm on the path. I'm on the path, but I'm not there yet. And again, maybe I'll never get there. Because there doesn't exist. And that's another trap that I've become very conscious of. This whole idea that you need to get somewhere or need to be something in the world. Um, so yeah, as long as I'm enjoying the process, I think I have achieved something, right. And just in general, I'm generally happy. So that's pretty good. Yeah.
So happy to hear it. So tell us, Nico, where our viewers can find you, uh,
Oh,
if they would like to contact you or see you or continue celebrating you as a god or human being or
I've just realized I've talked about myself for 2 hours. Yeah. But if you want to check out my stuff, just look up Nixon on YouTube. I've got a YouTube channel. I'll be putting out stuff regularly on that. Um, I've got a website. You can check out nixon.com.au, I think. We'll put all the stuff in the
yeah,
description,
we
right?
put all
And
the links
then,
in the descriptions
yeah,
here.
I'm on Instagram as well. I never wanted to be, but I'm paying a producer a lot of money now to force me to do this stuff.
Mm.
And I'll have a podcast coming out soon. I haven't worked out what the name is yet, though, so I don't know what it's called, but I've got a bunch of episodes now in the bag, so that'll be happening. And yeah, my book. If you go on Amazon.com, dot whatever, just look up No More Trippin' Nick Sun, and you can order my book online there. I know a lot of people have issues with Amazon. I just couldn't find a small independent thing to do a self-published work, so I had really not much choice. But if you want to avoid Amazon, just drop me a line, and you can just PayPal me the money, and I'll send you a copy myself, or send you an EPUB version, and we can cut out the middleman. So yeah, you can just email me at cambogaya@gmail.com as well. And also, I do consultancy work for psychedelic integration, spiritual counseling, all that sort of stuff. So if you have a issue, um, drop me a line, and maybe I can help. But so far, I've seemed to have been pretty good with especially people on the psychedelic path who are encountering problems.
Uh, yeah, we'll put all the links in the description. This question pop up to my mind. If there would be one question that you may ask yourself through me, if the universe can ask that question yourself through me, through us, through Beyond the Courage, what would be that question to help you express fully yourself?
Okay, my question would be, what question should I ask myself?
Okay, so what question should you ask yourself, Nixon?
No, no, that would be my question. What question should I ask myself? I don't know. I don't know. Like I'm me all the time. Like I need a break from that. So I don't-
Do
um,
you do you think that we are oneness? That I'm you, you are me. We are
yeah, I
nature,
mean,
nature
yeah,
is
I
us.
think the higher order of reality definitely unified being. But we're in the duality, so it's like this illusion, this working illusion, right? It's like you need an ego to operate in this world, and and it's a nice thing to say, definitely. But I used to joke around because I had a friend who'd always be like, "Hey, man, we're all one," and I'm like, "All right, well then give me all your money," and he never would. So I'm like, "Well then clearly you have an ego, because if you didn't, you'd give me all your money." And so he's like, "Oh, fuck you." So yeah, I'd say we all are one on a higher level, but while we're in the dualistic perspective, um, you know, the ego has work to carry out in the world. And I'm not saying like, obviously if you're a fully attained Maharishi yogi who's attained unified consciousness within the duality, then fuck man, hats off to you. I've yet to meet one in person. But I'm sure it's possible. Um, but yeah, we're all one. But having said that, sometimes you meet someone where you're like, fuck, do we have to be all one? Because that guy's like a real tool bag. Like, I need to divorce myself right now. If we're all one and that guy's in the unity, is there some way we can get that guy out of the unity? You know what I'm
I,
saying?
I ask myself that question so many
Because like
times.
I love that. I love being one, but there's definitely people where you're like, does that guy have to be part of the oneness as well? Because he's really challenging my fucking fifth dimensional unified consciousness field right now. Like why is
Yeah,
that guy
but if
there?
that guy wouldn't be a part of our oneness, the whole circus wouldn't be that fun, you know.
I know,
It
I
wouldn't
know,
be.
I know
It
he's
wouldn't. It
there as an
wouldn't be
indirect.
that beautiful and that twisted and whatever it is.
Yeah, I know. Still, they're fucking annoying sometimes. I mean, I'm fucking annoying sometimes. We're all
So
fucking annoying.
yes, we are. So what would you change about life and human nature? Maybe I ask you that the last question.
Oh my God,
Uh,
man, these are deep
what's
questions,
making
man.
that universe the most annoying? Why we are, there's so much suffering?
It's
What's
getting out
the
of the
root
way, man.
cause of it?
It's clinging. It's attachment for sure. It's attachment and aversion. The Buddhists were right, and the Vedics. I don't know. For me, it seems like my whole life is just like this letting go process, like surrendering at a deeper level, and it's hard because you like, how much more can I surrender? Like, and at the same time, it's also like learning when you should also fight as well. Like when you're actually meant to fight for something as well. It's very confusing. But what would I change? I wouldn't change the world at all because the world is the world, and you know, um, yeah. I know that if you change one thing about the world, it would create a whole different set of problems. So there's no perfect place to get to. The perfect place is like I believe like in some kind of heavenly realm. Um, but then I'm sure there'll still be one fuckwit there messing it up, right? Like the yin and yang. So, um, yeah. So what would I guess yeah. In the end, you just have to change your approach to life, right? Your own beingness in the world, which is basically getting out of the mind and into a more holistic field of consciousness, like the whole body form of consciousness, because it's always the mind which gets in the way, right? It's always the mind that's resisting. It's always the mind that's attaching. It's always the mind going, oh, if only this was less way, or if only that person was that way. So it's like getting out of the mind, getting out of the way of yourself. I think that's the only thing I'd change is people learning how to get the way out of, and also um, getting over themselves. That was the first message I got from ayahuasca was just like, get over yourself. Just get over yourself. Um, yeah, and just I guess humanity writ large, just to get over that child ego state that we're in currently. Then I think you know, we could look towards living in a more custodian, you know, less separated, more connected. Yeah, back to that whole idea of like the Christian man separate from nature, all the indigenous cosmologies. So we're always a part of nature. So it's like, yeah, I'd also try and get rid of that separation, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, but imagine that if we would get rid of all those most annoying guys in our universe, and we would just got left with all those beautiful, not annoying people at all, that we'll be having another second part of this podcast. Why is this universe so boring and so perfect?
Yeah, yeah, and you
Wouldn't it
know,
be like
I
that?
know that. Sorry?
Wouldn't it be like that? You know that why is it so
Yeah,
perfect?
yeah. Well, I think that's why we incarnated as well, right? So I guess,
Mhm.
yeah, and I'm well aware that I'm the annoying guy sometimes as well, especially to my partner. Like I am the problem, and that, you know, it takes two to tango, right? That person is annoying you because there's something in you that is being annoyed. So it's like, I think that's a true measure of healing if you get to a point where you're not triggered anymore. And I've met a few people who just don't seem to be triggered by a lot of shit. Um, so yeah, I think it's a marker of how far along the path you've come. Like I'd love to see if there was someone out there who triggered Buddha. Was there someone out there that just really pissed him off all the time? Like, I don't know. I don't think so. Well, I hope there was. I hope there was one disciple that he just was like, fuck, I hate that guy.
All right, everyone. Today we were celebrating Nick's son. It was the most funny and enjoyable celebration ever.
Yeah,
I hope we
celebrating.
can have
Woo!
you on the podcast. Excuse me.
Yeah, no. Anytime, man. No, it was an enjoyable exercise in egomania talking about myself for 2 hours and 10 minutes.
And we wish you to find the courage for that 5-MeO DMT experience because it's really life changing.
I'll get there in
Uh,
the end. I'll get there. I'm sure I will. I'm just looking for the right guy and the right set of circumstances. I'm waiting to be called, you know?
yeah, and we also wish you to expand your comedy, to express yourself, go even deeper. Your bits are very brave, way beyond the courage, way beyond our culture, which we love so much. And thank you so much, Nick.
Oh, thanks so much.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not courage, by the way. It's a combination of desperation and neediness. So
your
I have no other choice.
journey, your
No, I'm just kidding.
journey as a human being is really amazing, and I really truly believe that you are the God and you are creating this consciousness.
All right. Yeah, yeah. All right. I am God. I just can't take that too
Uh,
seriously because otherwise, you know, it'll go bad. That's what happens, right? So you're God too, Robert.
yeah. Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you so.
All right. Thank you, man.
I love you.
All right. Lots of love. See ya.